My international people, if you want to be rich, not just if you want to be rich, if you want to keep your money, this is the show for you right here today. U&I Talk Show, Rich People. My international people, thank you so much for joining your U&I Talk Show with your favorite host, Louise UWACU, in the house, broadcasting from Vancouver, speaking to Heather Wagenhals from Arizona, my people. She's looking like the multi-millionaire that she's trying to teach us to be. Welcome, Heather Wagenhals. Am I saying your name right, by the way?
Yes, you are. Amazingly enough, with your varied language and experiences, you nailed it right on the head.
Where is this name originally from?
It's my husband's name, and it's a German name. Mm-hmm. And I was told that the root is daredevil, which suits my husband perfectly.
So you married a daredevil?
Yeah, but, admittedly I am too, so.
Okay.
We're adrenaline junkies.
Well, Heather Wagenhals, thank you so much for being on the U&I Talk Show. And let's tell people what you do. You are also into broadcasting, and you have Unlock Your Wealth Radio. What is that? UnlockYourWealthRadio.com. Tell people what's that about.
Unlock Your Wealth Radio is my radio program that I have been doing for the past 10 years now. It first started on terrestrial radio here in Arizona. And I was trying to reach a broader audience, and my brother was, and still is, in the military, but he was deployed overseas, and him and his buddies really wanted to be able to listen, because what we do at Unlock Your Wealth Radio is teach you the essence of money management. And I have a brain-based financial literacy program, and we already know to spend less and save more. So it's really not about knowledge. It's really about what we believe in ourselves and the way in which we were raised, and the things that we don't really know that affect our money actually affect our money, because the decisions we make most of the time about money have nothing to do with money. And so we teach people how to identify limiting beliefs about money, and what we say, get your money mind right, so your wealth and happiness will follow.
Oh, I see. So you do have a new book coming out, which is called Cracking Your Money Code. Is that kind of the continuation of your work?
Absolutely, it is. I started out, and the way I kind of fell into this is I made my trip around the financial services world, a little bit of career ADD, you might say. And so I first started out as a stockbroker, very simply, because Gordon Gekko in the 80s, when I was just getting out of high school, said, greed is good. And I thought, okay, well, the fastest way to get rich is probably to follow the footsteps of the rich. And so that was the path that I started on. And, we grew up so poor when I was growing up. It was just my mom, my brother, and I. And I used to say that we were so poor that we had to envy the dirt poor kids because they had dirt. And my trip around financial services started as a stockbroker. And that was fun, but, I wasn't getting satisfied by just making millionaires more money. So I kind of went into investment advising. That had a little bit more involvement. It wasn't, hey, this is going up, want to buy it. It was starting to plan and figuring out where do you want to go and how to get there, and goal setting. And then I kind of, got bored of doing that because there was only so much you could do at that. And I went into mortgages because one of my friends said, hey, if you want to go back to school, which I was talking about going back to school, and said you should work in mortgages. You can work part-time. It's not like having to be a stockbroker or an investment advisor. You can make a lot of money at it while you get your education. So I said, okay. And as I was making my trip around financial services, I started noticing things. And it never mattered how much someone made. It had nothing to do with whether or not they were either going to achieve the the ability to do it, and I couldn't figure out why. So I started studying behavior, and I started looking at what people were doing. And just because people made a lot of money didn't mean they had a lot of money. And so as I started putting these correlations together and doing more research, I delved into psychology, which led me to a lot of brain research. And we're biologically set up to fail at long-term planning, and that's what I discovered. And so cracking your money code is those discoveries that I made about how the brain really works, what we do when we start processing information when it has to do with money or money-related issues, and whether or not we're going to be able to get there based on what our previous programming is, and how to identify what that is and work to overcome it. And then put a money management program in place that actually makes sense, works with the way your brain works.
So let me get this straight. Depending on how I think, I am going to make money or not.
Depending on how you think, it will depend. It'll do two things. It'll depend on whether you make money or not, and whether you'll be able to hang on to it or not. And that's the harder part that I learned after studying all of these people. And I am a financial coach also. And what I have found in my practice is that it never matters how much someone makes. That's not an indicator of how much they can save.
So tell people, how do I have to think? What kind of thinking? How do I crack this money code that you're saying? Like, how do I have to be thinking in order to become this rich person, a multi-millionaire? And can anyone really do this? And is this something applicable to North America? Because you've traveled the world, I've traveled the world. You know how different it is in different parts of the world. Is your system applicable to the rest of the world, or is this just something North American?
It's very applicable to the individual. And that's the beauty of it, because it's biology-based and behavior-based, the same tendencies. So whether we speak and grow up in a third world country where there's very limited opportunity, very oppressive governments, or whether we come from one of the richest countries in the world, it doesn't matter, because just because you're born with wealth doesn't mean you're going to keep it. And that's one of the shocking things that I found, is that it really, truly, your ability to succeed at money management has nothing to do with where you start. But it because of the way the brain works, it has everything to do with where you finish. And so to answer your question, yes, anybody can do this. Everybody has the same capacity to be a millionaire. It's whether or not they exercise that capacity. And the first part is belief. And I remember, when I went to go visit my dad, and I was in my teens, we didn't grow up with him. He always lived in a different state. And I remember having a conversation with him, and I was asking for something. And he says, look, I'm not made of money. And he goes, you need to just lower your expectations. And I was kind of mortified, because I was tired of getting what I already had, which was nothing. Or I had to work my fingers to the bone to get it. And I was looking for something different. And I made a remark to him. And I remember saying this. I said, I was totally born in the wrong income bracket. I was meant to be rich. And I didn't know what really rich meant. And my definition of rich has changed over time. But I knew I wasn't meant to be where I was. Now, that was the start. Your attitude is everything, because it gives you the foundation that you need to springboard into the other stuff. So the first thing is attitude. So if you believe you can do it, that's your foundation to start. So if you could do anything you wanted to do in this world, Louise, and if you were fearful of doing it, if I told you you couldn't fail, would you try it?
I am trying it.
Okay. And so I define failure is when you quit. So if you never quit, then can you ever really fail?
Wow. Okay, we'll take a short break. That's the perfect time to take a short break and have people think about that. And then we'll be back in a few seconds. Let's run a few commercials. And that's a really, really great thing. Can you repeat that before we go to break?
Absolutely. The simple question is, what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? And if failure is only defined by quitting, then if you never quit, do you ever really fail?
We'll be back, my international people. We never fail. Welcome back, my international people. We're still talking to Heather Wagenhals, author and broadcaster, and she is coming out with a new book called Cracking Your Money Code. Now, we're trying to teach people how to become rich, and we're trying to teach people how to become wealthy. So she is the perfect expert to talk to today, especially to so many people out there who are so hungry and want to get rich. And she just mentioned something that was so important, which is that this is not necessarily something that's applicable just to America and North America, right?
Yes. We were talking before the break, Louise, about the ability to succeed. And I mentioned failure. We talked about if we only see failure as quitting, if we never quit, do we ever really fail? And one of the presuppositions that I use in my coaching practice when I help people try to reframe where they are is, if you never see failure as failure, but only as the feedback you need to change course and plot in a new direction, then failure can work for you. I mean, there's lots of books on it. Failing up. Think about how many times that Edison failed before the light bulb came into fruition, and he never saw it as failure. He only saw it as feedback. Well, that didn't work. Let's try again. And so you've got to be relentless. And when it comes to money management and creating the life that you desire, it's not a race. It's a journey. And so each day brings new rewards and repercussions that can lead us to the next new day. And we always have to think in terms of every decision we make is the right decision to make, because it leads us to the next right decision. And if we believe that, because we can't fail, because unless we quit, we don't fail. If we believe that, then that will give us the foundation for the next part. And that's understanding our biology and how the brain really works. We evolved, okay? So we are the apex predator of this planet, but we didn't get here overnight. And we started out with a survival brain. So you've all heard of fight, freeze, or flee. So we start with our survival brain, and that's the first brain that we use to process information. Now, even though we have an emotional brain that wraps around that and a logic brain that helps us reason and make decisions, we still make decisions with that first survival brain because the information comes through there. And so we first decide if it's a threat, and if it is, we're going to run, or we're going to play dead, or we're going to attack. Then, if none of those things get triggered, then we go into the next part of our brain, and then we have an emotion about that particular experience. So if it was when you went to Disneyland for the first time and you were pretty young, and you saw those rides and you got scared, now that's starting a pattern. So then the next time you see roller coasters, if you don't go on those rides and you never find out that they're really not that scary, then you'll still be scared of them the next time you see it. And then the next time, your survival brain will stop the process and it'll immediately have you run away or have you attack something. And so that's what happens once we get into that second brain. If we have an emotion, and if it's a strong enough one that pushes us back into survival, then we're going to make whatever decision has been patterned in. So whatever we've done before is what we're going to do again.
Wow. Heather, thank you so much. That was so interesting. We got to take a little short break. My international people, welcome back to U&I Talk Show. Louise UWACU hosting your favorite show right here with a guest who's so interesting, Heather Wagenhals, making people rich, turning you from zero to millions. Now, Heather, did you become a multi-millionaire yourself?
Yes, and I did it the hard way. I did it the hard way. It was difficult, because I was my own saboteur. And so all these concepts that I learned, I was actually able to start applying them within my own life to be able to get on my way. I love it. Larry Wingett, who is the self-proclaimed pit of personal development, and his last book he wrote is called Grow a Pair. And this guy is kind of cut to the chase, straight to the point. And he wrote a book years ago called You're Broke Because You Want to Be. And one of the things that he says, and I wholeheartedly agree with this, is that, people don't get rich. They give up what's making them poor. And it's simply about choice. Now, because we understand that biology plays into that, so you can't make an effective choice if you get emotionally engaged or if your survival mechanism gets triggered. So right then and there, that we know that all decision making is off the table, and whatever you do is what is done. So if something bad happens or you overspend and you start panicking, like, oh my gosh, I did it again. So then you avoid the mailbox, because whenever the mail comes, you're going to get the late notice. And then when we avoid that, then we actually get the late fees, and then we're always chronically paying our bills late, and it's costing us so much more money, but then we don't do what we should do to stop that. And that's just simply walk to the mailbox and open it up when we're supposed to. And I was, I became a victim of that myself, because my father, when he passed away, there was all sorts of stuff kind of surrounding his death. And I was so stressed out, and there was so much going on that all I could do was keep working. So I showed up every day, and I worked every single day. And I was going 90 miles an hour. But in the 3 months after he passed, in the 2 weeks while he was in intensive care in chemical coma, I never opened the mail. And I didn't want to open the mailbox because I knew that something bad was going to be in there. And that just made it all worse. And I kept getting emotionally engaged. So even though logically I know that if I want to avoid a late fee, I have to pay my bills on time. But I get that emotional engagement that it's going to be painful. I'm going to feel bad. I'm going to know I'm not worthy. I'm probably going to lose my credit rating. This is going to happen to me. I'm probably going to lose my limit. I'm probably going to get charged extra fees. When that happens to us and we get emotionally engaged, we can't get around it unless we break that emotional state or break that survival mode. And we've got the patterns. And, it happens when we go impulse or go to the mall for like a regular expenditure, but we catch ourselves impulse shopping instead. I'm sure that you've eyeballed particular piece of fashion, whether it's a fabulous dress or a great blazer, and you've looked at it and you're like, man, I want that so bad, but I know I can't afford it. And then you get to the mall the next time and there it is, 70% off. And you're like, oh my gosh. And like before you know it, like you're at the register handing over your plastic and you've got all these wonderful feelings that, oh my gosh, I could finally afford this expensive thing. But even though it's 70% off, it's still out of your price range and your budget because you hadn't planned for it. And so you're still getting yourself in trouble. You got to be able to go and be able to get in front of that and look for those anchors that we have already set, because they can kind of be landmines for us. And we've got to get ahead of those. And we have to stop physiology. So that's like taking a deep breath, going around the mall. And one of the best techniques that I have found that has everything to do with the way we think. When we think loss or lack or want, it means we're missing something. And so if we think of ourselves as whole, healed, and complete, and not that we can't afford it, we can say, yes, I can choose this item now. And that is an option, but I'm going to wait. So instead of saying, no, you can't have that, which all we're going to do is think about it, and then we're going to wind up getting it, and then we're going to feel bad afterward because, the universe abhors a vacuum. So when we feel like something's missing, we're going to put something there. So instead of putting that red dress on sale that you still can't afford there, let's look at it like a whole healed and complete. And yes, I could buy that. But if I do, I'm going to not be able to fulfill my goals. Sheet. And I want to be able to create my emergency fund first. And then I want to have all my debt paid off. And then I want to start building my retirement fund. But I can't do all of those things if I'm stuck with this red dress.
Yeah. So one of the things that you said, that it's harder to keep the money that you make it's much harder to keep the money that you make, much more than it is to make the money. Now, in terms of telling people how they're going to keep their money, let's talk about this special case that you have, this special case with Bank of America and the whole mortgage fraud or scam. What exactly happened with Bank of America, and how is it that people lose their money through investing into mortgage, for example, and how can people avoid that?
You bring up an excellent case. We've got a few different components moving in that particular case. And Bank of America bought Countrywide, which is the center or the source of the investigation, okay? And what happened was people were told that, the dream of homeownership should be a reality for everybody. And the reality really is that only those who are ready, willing, and able to take on the responsibility of homeownership should be eligible for homeownership. So that was the first problem, when public policy kind of said that everybody deserved it. That was where it started. Then there was a clamor in the marketplace to make that happen, okay? And so what we did in the marketplace, and I'm not saying we, but specifically Countrywide, is they made mortgage products available to people that technically weren't eligible for them. So, for example, these adjustable rate mortgages that they were using, and they were using them on flexible rates. So a mortgage on an adjustable rate loan is based on some sort of index. And LIBOR, which is the London Interbank overnight rate, and what most banks base their short-term loans on, it fluctuates. And so and it can be volatile. Statistically, it's been pretty steady, but it can be volatile. The problem is that mortgages with adjustable rate loans are meant for people that have flexible income, like commissioned employees or people that bonus, or company owners, okay, that can go out and make more widgets, sell more real estate, sell more stocks, sell more whatever they sell on commission, okay? But what happened is mortgage products were being sold to people on salaried incomes, meaning whether they flipped 100 burgers or 1,000 burgers in an hour, it didn't matter. Whether you processed one piece of paper all day or 10,000, it didn't matter. Your income was your income. And so if the payment went like this, there's no way that you could augment your income to do the same thing and follow along. So set these people up for failure to begin, and it let them feel like they were eligible for the American dream, which became their own personal nightmare for most of those people. Now you couple that with these underwriting guidelines that were just, thrown out the window. They said, what underwriting guidelines? And that was one of them, was that you can't be salaried if you're on these types of loans. And they were like, whatever. So a cashier at Home Depot was able to buy a $700,000 condominium here in Arizona during all of that market flood, okay? And the reality is buying zero down creates inordinate risk for the bank. And then they went and they sold that to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, which are government-sponsored entities that packaged these loans and then sold them on the stock market to go raise more money to sell more loans. But the problem is that these loans are packaged under the auspices that they meet certain criteria. And none of these criteria were met. There weren't down payments, They called these, low doc loans or create-a-doc loans. If you didn't have a bank statement, no problem. I've got a printer, we'll just make one. So this fraud went on within the individual loan officers, within the individual industry, but the Countrywide got in trouble for packaging those loans and selling them to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, who ultimately created a security, sold it to investors. And it was sold based on a particular rate of return by the type of mortgages that were supposed to be in what they called these pools. And that's where the fraud occurred. Because not only did they do fraudulent loans, but they packaged them and they sold them as something that they weren't. And so when those started to tank, obviously the bank wasn't making the money that they were supposed to because everybody was defaulting on their mortgage. You know, if your payment is, say, $1,000 this month, but the interest rate adjusts and your contract says it can adjust by 4% or more, and all of a sudden now you have like a $3,000 house payment, how can you possibly make it when you're only budgeted for that $1,000? So that's what kind of went on, and that's what got in trouble.
So now whose fault is this? Because you're an investor, you just made your money, you think you're investing with a solid bank, Bank of America, and it's government approved and all this stuff is going on under the government. So if you lose your money as a new millionaire who was just investing your money, whose fault is this? Who pays for this? Do you ever get your money back?
Well, that's what's going to be interesting to see how this sorts out, because Bank of America is contesting the penalties that have been assessed to them. It's $807 something million. But if you think about what Bank of America makes, that's only 4 days worth of income, because they make about $274-ish million a day. So it's not that big a deal. But what happens is you lose an investor who are buying stocks in portfolios. The risk is on you. Now, there is fraud involved. Will that settlement get distributed to the investors? Who knows? You know, but your quality of ownership is what's important when you're trying to build wealth. And that's why real estate is a tangible type of asset. So at the end of the day, even if the real estate market tanks, you still have a tenant in your property, okay? You still have value for that asset, okay? However, if, let's say, you buy a stock in a company, you have a piece of paper that says you're entitled to some ownership.
So you still advise people that real estate is still the best investment in terms of
asset-backed investment, best investment. So it could be real estate, it could be, you know, types of holding ownership in property. You know, there's, you know, bond versus stocks are a higher quality of ownership because you debt hold. You have because you're a debt holder, you have a senior priority on the liquidation of a company. You know, so if a company goes bankrupt, the people that bought stock, it's valueless. And they can only have a percentage of what's left after the debt holders get their amount. So I am a big proponent of asset-backed securities. So if you can get, or you can buy into real estate or real estate portfolios where they have shares of stock, you know, real estate investment trusts, that you know that particular piece of investment is backed by something specific. And that's what I advocate. And real estate is always a good investment, whether it's going up or down. You just have to know how to read the market and time your investment right. Because money is always made on your buy, not on your sell. And if we remember that full rule about investing, and we take our emotions out of the investing picture and use logic to the best of our ability, we'll be able to reduce the amount of fraud that we experience in our lives.
Wow. Heather Wagenhals, thank you so much. We're out of time, but tell people where they can find you. Tell people about your radio show and tell people about your upcoming book. We're completely out of time, but we thank you so much. It's been so interesting. I feel like I need to talk to you more. So
I'd love to be back.
We will definitely have you back. We should invite you back because this is like a warm-up. This feels like a warm-up because you have so much information.
We're just getting started.
Yeah.
If your viewers want to get in on some daily tips on the newsletter and get ready for the upcoming book, visit crackingyourmoneycode.com. And I've got a short form program syndicated all across North America. And unlockyourwealthradio.com is where the show is if you want to learn how to get your money mind right.
Yes. So thank you so much for being on the show, and we'll definitely keep in touch. And then you'll be giving us more tips on how to become rich and how to keep our money. Do you have any last sentence that you want to say? Anything?
Yes. So for you, Louise, and your listeners and viewers, that if there's one piece of information I can give you about great money management, it all starts with knowing what your motivation is. And if you know your motivation, then you'll make the right decision every time.
Know your motivation. Thank you so much, Heather Wagenhals. Have a great day. We appreciate your time, and we'll definitely have you back on the U&I Talk Show.